Hello and welcome to A Grain of Sanderson, a podcast where we are foolishly attempting to read all of Brandon Sanderson's works in publication order. I am joined by Taylor Lane.
Hello.
And Jack McLaughlan.
Hello.
And this month we have read Steelheart, and I think this conversation is going to be really interesting because I kind of like this book.
For the first time on A Grain of Sanderson, we have a book where Taylor and I are generally the most negative and Graham is the most positive.
Yeah, I'm not going to be a super defender of this book. It definitely has problems, and I definitely want to talk about them because there is some bullshit in here. But also, I think this is probably the best paced book Sanderson has ever written.
Wild take. Actually, a wild take.
Because I had a lot of problems with the book. However, I have to sort of agree with Graham because I don't think pacing was one of my problems with the book. In fact, I started reading the book like 2 weeks before we had to have it finished for recording. And I did that because Taylor mentioned, oh, this is like a real like long book, and I didn't realize. So I was like, oh crap, I got to start reading.
Yeah, we've been reading novellas.
And then I read it in 2 days, despite not liking it, which is weird. It's a weird experience to have a book that you don't really like and you still finish it so quick.
Yeah, it's one of those scenes where I could understand if you were not vibing with the book, it could feel very long, which is what I'm guessing happened to you, Taylor. But I think one of the things that's interesting is if you plot down every single scene or just look at a summary, it's like, oh yeah, it is actually kind of hard to take anything out. Basically, as soon as they're wrapped up with one major plot beat, they're already into the next.
Interesting. When I was reading this, that I was getting very bogged down by fluff I didn't think mattered. But I think that was all connected to my most major problem with this book, which was that the prologue gave way too much away. And so I was reading them kind of like trying to find out Steelheart's weakness. And I was just like, this is fluff on fluff on fluff because like you gave everything away in the prologue. Like, I don't care about this bank vault. You gave away that it has something to do with the dad. Like, if he had just...
That was the
I
one
think that
scene that I think...
just, like...
That was the one scene that I was fully agree with you on, that I was like, that probably should go, but...
We can get it, because the prologue is my biggest point, so, like, we will be talking about the prologue.
Do we want to then do our one-sentence summaries?
Sure. My one-sentence summary is just about my response to the book. I went into this fully expecting to be a bitter hater, because one of my least favorite genres is what if Supermen was evil, and I walked away from it thinking this is one of Sanderson's better books, even though I think it has a ton of problems.
My one sentence is notably a little more negative. Garth Ennis writes the boys in their high school creative writing class.
My one-sentence summary is quit it with the prologues. Because I think this happened with Rhythmatist as well, where the prologue gave away literally everything and the book was mildly boring because I was like, okay, well, we already knew what's going to happen.
I feel like, is that something that comes from like TV? Like that trope of doing a prologue, which is like you kind of see a big important scene that gives you a lot of hints to what's going on, and then...
You want to start the book interestingly and you want to start with a lot of action.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that and there's ways to do it correctly. I just think that Sanderson specifically has a tendency to give away his big mystery right there. And it's like, you can just make it interesting, but like write it in a way where there's still something to be found there, where I felt like it was pretty clear cut what was happening by the end of the prologue.
And I guess he's done it right before. Like, Mistborn had a great prologue. That prologue with, like, Kelsier fighting the thing. It's like, okay, that was, like, gave you a good promise of the book. It's like, okay, oppression of the Ska, Mistborn fighting, all of this stuff. And then it also told you jack shit about whatever the big mystery thing was going to be.
One of the things that's sort of worth unpacking is generally there are two kinds of, to your example of television, there are two kinds of mysteries that you'll see in media. The whodunit. And like that's your like Agatha Christie, where you show up into a mystery novel and it's like, all right, someone has been killed, who did it? You have a whole cast of characters, that sort of thing. And then there is also the How to Catch 'Em, also sometimes shortened as a How Catch 'Em. And this is your Columbo, where like you basically start the episode knowing who the murderer is. And the interesting part of the format is figuring out how Columbo is going to beat this guy. Because, like, you know he's guilty, but how? The reason I think it doesn't really work for Sanderson as much, the interesting part is, like, oh, what is the actual secret? The interesting part is not how is this going to unravel generally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am much less interested in how Vin and Sazed come to the secrets of the world than I am the secrets of the world, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense.
I'm going to get started.
My favorite
Sure.
how catch them is Pokemon.
Shut the fuck up.
Steelheart is a YA superhero novel where a ragtag crew of revolutionaries called the Reckoners set out to kill the superhero dictator named Steelheart. The basic setup is that epics are what they call superheroes, and all epics have a unique and unexpected weakness that allows you to harm them. The book begins with a prologue set 10 years before the modern day. Our main character, David, is 8 years old and in a bank with his father in Chicago. Suddenly, an epic comes into the bank and begins to violently rob the place. That's when Steelheart arrives. He proclaims the city as his own and its citizens to his control. David's father, ex-military, steps up to Steelheart and passionately talks about how he was supposed to be the hero. And when Steelheart is distracted, David's father takes a shot at the other epic who is sneaking up behind Steelheart. David's father shoots and kills this epic, but grazes Steelheart's cheek, making him bleed. Steelheart goes into a complete rage, killing everyone he can see around him in the bank, including David's father with his own gun, and like his namesake, turns everything around him into steel. Steelheart then goes to get another epic to actually sink the entire bank into the earth. Our story begins in Nukago, a city completely turned to steel by Steelheart. David gets some intel that the Reckoners, a group of people whose only mission is to kill epics, might be in town and striking an epic that evening. David shows his prowess in a fight and with an epic named Fortuity, and after, the team takes him to a secure place in the underground steel tunnels to interrogate him. He convinces the Reckoners to keep him on through his obsessive research into the local epics in Nukago. His research is in his apartment, so their next hit is there, where an illusion epic is waiting. David and his love interest Megan, and a southern man who speaks of his Scottish heritage, Cody, successfully retrieve his notes while planting the idea that a new epic is in town and looking to challenge Steelheart. David convinces the Reckoners not to leave Nukago, but stay to hear his plan to kill his father's killer, Steelheart. They agree and get to work in figuring out Steelheart's weakness and setting up a way for it to look like there's a new epic in town. They stop by a weapons dealer named Diamond, and while there, another high epic named Nightwielder shows up, an epic responsible for the perpetual night surrounding Nukago at all times. David, wanting to prove a theory he has, shines a UV light on Nightwielder and learns his weakness. Their next hit to convince the city there's another epic in town is on the power station. While infiltrating, the team uses technology like tensors, gloves that let them dig into walls, jackets with impact protection, and Harm's Way, an ultra-healing device. While digging through the power station, David and Megan run into some guards, and though they are staring right at them, mysteriously don't see them. The rest of the operation goes off, and the crew successfully evacuates and then blows up the power station to the city, proclaiming that a new epic named Limelight is coming for Steelheart. After, the team goes to hit Conflux, another high epic whose energy powers provide power to most of the city. He is usually transported via motorcade, and so they strike when they know where they know he will be. But it's a trap. Nightwielder is there, as well as much as enforcement or police. A motorcycle chase ensues, where, at the end of it, Megan is badly injured and David has to carry her to safety. While fighting off enforcement, David professes his love to her before Prof comes and saves them. Prof reveals his complete prowess with tensors, zapping bullets in midair and carving a sword out of steel around them. They take Megan back to the base, but it's too late. Megan dies while they try to save her and leave her body to be cremated as they blow up their old, compromised hideout. However, not all is lost. While David and Megan were off fighting, Cody found a body in the back of the motorcade's car. He brings the body back, and they learn that it is Conflux, who is actually a man named Edmund and is a power-supplying slave to Steelheart, not a domineering and mysterious epic like they thought. Steelheart takes the bait. He wants to fight Limelight. The Reckoners choose the old football stadium as their place to fight. When the epics arrive, things immediately go wrong. The epics, such as Nightwielder, know their exact positions, and already he goes immediately for David. While in the back of the stadium, David believes he sees Megan, but she's hard to pin down. In a confrontation where he confirms that Steelheart's crew is listening in on Megan's old phone, David manages to trick Nightwielder and kill him. But Megan is there, trapped under rubble. When she emerges, David realizes that Megan is actually Steelheart's third, very high-powerful high epic ally, Firefight. An epic that looks like they are on fire, but is actually an extremely skilled illusion. David leaves Megan, who seems to have some strange amnesia and doesn't recognize David at first. He goes to help some of the other Reckoners who are in trouble. All this time, Prof has been fighting Steelheart alone, without knowing his weakness, so none of them can get a hit on him. The fight continues to go poorly. The other Reckoners begin to retreat, but David approaches Steelheart, who actually recognizes David from 10 years ago before in the bank. In a flash of inspiration, David realizes Steelheart's weakness. He shoves a detonator into his gun so that when Steelheart goes to fire it at David, Steelheart blows himself up. His weakness is that he could only be killed by anyone who's not afraid of him, so David got him to kill himself. In the end, Prof reveals himself to be an epic. The technology was actually all him, gifting his epic powers out to the team. David also goes back for Megan and learns that one of her powers is to reincarnate, but when she does so, she has limited memories. Megan is rewatching the love confession from David and is overwhelmed and needs space. In the end, David leaves Megan, advising her not to use her epic powers that corrupt her and to find the Reckoners again later.
And that's the book.
I just want to put one quick note, because we talked about how part of the premise of this book is like, hey, what if everyone that had superpowers was villains? And the book kind of asked the question, like, why are there no good epics? Like, why is it that anyone that has superpowers is also like just like an evil person? And it seems like the book almost begins to suggest it's like an absolute power corrupts absolutely thing. But then it goes, no, it's absolute power corrupts absolutely as a magic system. Like, it's just... Well, that's something's happening. And I think it's just interesting because, and we'll get into this when we get into the meta stuff, but when I was like reading interviews and words of Brandon about this book, it seems like he approached this book from a position of like, man, regular people shouldn't get superpowers because they probably would do bad things with it. But then in this book, he still ended up going like, no, there will be good people that get these powers. And so these powers make you evil somehow.
Yeah, that's sort of one of the interesting things. And like, I kind of think this is a tidy way of handling this, because you could actually have, like, you could have one or the other, and it would be okay. But the thing that's sort of frustrating to me about it is the implication that, like, oh yeah, evil comes from the evil star in the sky, the alien. Is like, yeah, there's an evil star in the sky that showed up, and that's what gave everyone superpowers.
The Calamity is what it's called.
Yeah, they call it The Calamity, which is notably one of the sequel book's titles, so it's gonna be relevant again. And it's like, oh, all superpowers probably came from this star, and that's what's making people evil. The book is very wishy-washy on, like, the axiom, absolute power corrupts absolutely, or is it just the aliens are bad?
Yeah, when I was first reading this, getting into our first topic, which is going to be about genre. When I was first reading this, actually, to kind of, I guess, make myself like it a little bit more, I found myself not thinking of this as a superhero genre, but thinking of it more as like dark academia, where like kind of like looking at how power corrupts and how, like, because that's kind of what that genre is about, and like how, you know, really deep research and like knowledge can like lead to like corrupting. But unfortunately, that only got me through half of the book, because then we kind of got into this like, oh, it's the alien thing that goes on, and I was like, okay, well, it's not quite like the corrupted like vibe anymore.
I would love to read a dark academia book about aliens. I'm sure that exists actually, but if someone knows a decent book that has that kind of genre matchup, please recommend it to me.
I love it.
We can go into like the evil Superman genre a lot, which, Graham, I know you have a lot to say about that, so we're excited to get to that. But as any listener knows, we're currently at a time where there's a lot of evil Superman. Well, asterisk, a lot of evil Superman genre, or a lot of stuff what people call evil Superman genre that I firmly believe is not actually evil Superman.
Well, I mean, like,
But
an evil Superman shows up in it. It may not necessarily be exclusively the only thing going on.
But yeah, but I mean, you have The Boys, you have Invincible, you have Injustice. I'm sure there are other examples that I'm blanking on right now.
I mean,
Steelheart.
Brightburn is a real big one. Steelheart, obviously, is one of them.
Well, Steelheart came out, what? This was 2013?
Yeah. It comes out before Man of Steel, notably, which a lot of the fan base of Superman might argue that Man of Steel is an evil Superman movie.
It's a boring Superman movie.
I think the movie looks fine, and it has a great soundtrack.
But you're right. Actually, yeah, Man of Steel. But Man of Steel does kind of play with that evil play along the edges of evil Superman. Which, I mean, Graham, I feel like you're the one who's going to be able to give the best description of like what are we talking about when we say evil Superman genre, like more specifically, like what does that actually mean to you for a story to be a good evil Superman story?
I would say that a good evil Superman story, as far as I'm concerned, generally doesn't use Superman himself. But, you know, there can be exceptions to this. One of my favorite quote-unquote evil Superman stories is Superman Red Sun, which is what would happen if Superman landed in Soviet Russia instead of Kansas. And it's quite good. It's quite good. It's a really good comic book. It is an okay movie.
The comic came out in 2003, and then the film adaptation was 2020.
Yeah, and the film adaptation, it takes some wild departures. So, like, I would say that's a particularly good one. Really interesting, got a bunch of fun stuff going on. The other thing that I would say is necessary for your evil Superman to be good, apart from it, like, I would prefer if you didn't use Superman, you have to do an interesting twist as to why this evil version is more compelling. Like, for example, Alan Moore's Watchmen is sort of everyone likes that book, and I quite like that book as well. It's the book that people point to and say, oh, you're not into comics, well, you should try this one, which I think is actually a kind of failing of comics fandom, because that book is very, very good. It would help to have read a not extensive but decent amount of superhero media ahead of time, because what that book is subverting is much more interesting. Because that book isn't what if Superman was evil. That book is what would the world of superheroes be like if Superman never existed.
And by Superman we like that, like paragon, like the strongest guy that also really just stands up for goodness and makes everyone better.
I mean, the whole thing of is like Superman makes the right choice every time. He's the symbol of hope. And, you know, Watchmen doesn't have that, so our superheroes are evil. The closest thing we have to a Superman is Dr. Manhattan. He's much more in conversation with, like, Captain Atom and a couple of other characters. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I would say would be necessary for an evil Superman is you have to be doing something with that symbol of hope that I think is interesting. And for example, like Garth Ennis's The Boys, this is a Superman who is obsessed with his own image because that has to represent a specific corporate image, at least for the television show. It's been too long since I've read the comics. And honestly, I think at least the first season of the show is probably better than a lot of what the comics does.
Later seasons get a little weird, but I'm a defender of, I think Homelander is a good evil Superman, like a compelling evil Superman.
Homelander is extremely compelling, and I really like the first season of that television show, but every subsequent season I've like, this is terrible. And then Invincible would be another good example of like, it's not an evil Superman story, it's what if evil Superman was your dad.
Yeah, exactly. It's Invincible. I feel okay. I'm arguing with like people that aren't in the room right now. I feel like I've seen online people complain about Invincible being boring evil Superman because they point to Nolan as being Superman but evil. But no, Invincible is Superman in this story.
Yes, evil Superman is your dad. And like, I think those are the things that kind of are what make it work. I would say Brightburn is an example of like a relatively bad evil Superman.
That was the one with the kid, like where it was a yeah.
And notably, that is a James Gunn script, I think, or at least partially a script. I think it may have undergone a rewrite, but I think there's a reason that like he didn't direct that movie. He was like, someone can have my script if they're going to pay me, but I'm not going to end up directing it. I think it was directed by one of his family members or something like that. And there's plenty of bad evil Superman books as well, like Injustice, I think, is largely bad. Although everyone forgets that, like, kind of the whole point of Injustice is, like, evil Superman gets his ass completely whooped by normal Superman at the end of that video game, and also the comic, and also the film adaptation, which is fun.
By the way, it's David Yarovesky is the Brightburn director. I hope I pronounced his name correctly.
I have not been chiming in because I do not really consume superhero media. I have not seen... Jack tried to get me to watch Invincible. I only got as far as the times I was watching it with Jack. Haven't seen The Boys. I've seen Man of Steel because my dad's obsessed with that movie. And as most dads are, I'd say.
That's a very dad thing.
A lot of dads are. And, I liked Marvel, but there's not really the same thing as like what the Steelheart is kind of in conversation with there.
No. I mean, generally the sort of like Marvel and DC house rules are operating in sort of different ways, and they're both good in their own ways.
Yeah. I
like what you said about Steelheart being, because you mentioned that like subversion on the symbol of hope, and that with Steelheart it's symbol of fear. It's so there Brandon Sanderson is kind of doing that subversion with this book, because I mean like what happened, I don't think it came up in the summary, but there's a couple different things that happen where like Steelheart does some kind of propaganda video out to everyone, where part of it is him just standing on his castle and just starts firing laser beams out into the city, destroying a building with everyone inside, completely unprompted, completely just randomly. And he just did that as like hey guys, don't forget ever that I'm here and I'm scary. And then he had an entire, and this we learn is because he did this because of his weakness is people that aren't afraid of him. He had an entire propaganda department dedicated to him seeing worse than he was, inventing atrocities he committed that he was too lazy to actually go do, just so people would fear him even more.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, Graham, I wish that he had really maybe leaned a bit more into like an actual like symbol or something. Mm-hmm. Just as someone who is staring at the cover of this book is really not that cute.
It's quite bad.
I have Fable, and I was joking to my friends that Steelheart really messed up the vibes of my Fable because it's so ugly. And I feel like they could have done something with the cover here, because it's like literally like steel coming back to like a heart, and I'm like, really? Like we could have done. I feel like we could have done something with this. We could have like made like a symbol.
There's a couple that I really like. I'm looking at the cover gallery. I was looking at the cover gallery because I wanted one for the copy on my phone, because for some reason the normal cover didn't load in, so I had to pick my own. I really like the cover for Brazil.
That's not bad.
Ooh, it's actually comic-y.
For the listener at home, the Brazilian cover of Steelheart, there is a sinister red star in the sky of a ruined and destroyed Chicago, with a superhero dead center, or supervillain rather, dead center. You can only see his silhouette, and he has a sort of cape draping behind him. It looks very similar actually to the poster for Brightburn in terms of like the silhouettes and stuff like that.
It's very much a silhouette meant to evoke Superman.
Yes, absolutely. It's quite good. There's some other good ones.
This discussion brings up another point. None of the epics, none of the evil epics in this story have any sense of style. They don't have any.
So true. Tell them.
Because I remember this is long before I read Steelheart, but I remember I saw some video where Brandon Sanderson was getting interviewed or talking to some artist who part of the interview was the artist would like draw Brandon Sanderson's characters. I'm gonna if I remember, I'm gonna probably ask Graham to put the link to this in the show notes. But they get to Steelheart, and I remember I'd never seen Steelheart, but we get to Steelheart, and it's just a very, very muscular, like square-jawed man wearing like a tight black t-shirt, jeans, and has a cape. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's the villain.
I wish they had done something to incorporate sort of the interesting ideas there, because like I don't want to get too far into comics history, but there is a very famous comic that is not necessarily evil Superman, but there are some evil Supermen within it, called The Reign of the Supermen. And this is a comic that takes place after the very famous comic, The Death of Superman, which has a huge cultural impact. This is the basis for the film Batman v Superman, which, like, you know, I don't think is very good, but, you know, it has a huge cultural impact.
Another dad film.
Another dad film. It's a certain kind of guy film. And then, but like, the Death of Superman comic, this was such a big deal that it was national news. Like, it was reported on the nightly news of like, hey, Superman's gonna die. And like, so that happens, and it's a big event comic. Superman is killed by a character known as Doomsday.
They did a movie adaptation of that, right? Like an animated movie?
Mm-hmm. I have not seen that.
I've seen that. I'm pretty sure that's all. I haven't read the comic, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that.
There is a follow-up comic called, or run called The Reign of the Supermen. And basically the question is, who's going to replace him? And there are a bunch of different Supermen that show up. And one of them is Steel, who is a black man named John Henry Irons. And he has some superpowers on his own, but he also has this massive mech suit and a hammer. Cool fashion. Superboy shows up as well, and he's got a cool punk jacket. And it's like, yeah, this book is absolutely stylish. And I do think about all these other Supermen who show up to replace Superman. It's like, yeah, they were stylish, way better.
I think the only epics that have any style is Nightwielder, because he just has like an aesthetic, I guess. And I'm not saying it's a good one, but he did have a style.
I really don't like the fact that Nightwielder is described as having an Eastern business suit. There's a weird amount of Orientalism with our two Asian characters in this book.
I agree.
I'm not saying good style. I'm just saying he's one of the characters that had any kind of description of having a style.
Yeah.
At the end, I think the professor had some kind of style to him.
Was
like
it
his, like, black lab coat and like...
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
I would also say that Fortuity does, because like Fortuity has sort of like, for lack of a better word, a pimp look.
Well, that was what I was about to get into, which is like, does it feel like to you guys that like idea of New Chicago kind of began more at like, what if it was completely in steel, and what if it was like nighttime all the time, and what if people wore like cool 20s outfits, and then we were like, okay, well, how can I make that?
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's like the aesthetic started first, and then we made like characters around that. I feel like
that tracks with how Brandon Sanderson has written books before as well. Like he has like an aesthetic idea of what everything looks like.
Yeah, like Mistborn.
Yeah, like Mistborn came out of, and like I think this is perfectly valid. Like I think I do this all the time when I'm writing or I'm like running D&D or something. He just saw a cathedral lit in the mist, and it was like a really striking image. And that was and then he cites that as one of his motivations for Mistborn. I don't think I found anything when I was looking through like various interviews about where the idea for Metal Chicago came from.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't seem to talk about that in particular, like beyond just the mechanics of, like, I think someone was asking him like, what was the radius of it? And he was like, the radius was however big it needed to be to include Soldier Field. And that was, and then that's why he emphasized the lake with the palace, because he then was doing that math and realized, oh, that means I get a sizable chunk of the lake. Huh? Can I do something weird with this?
I wish there was a little bit more in terms of the real world of it all, because like Soldier Field is like the first time we get a mention of like a Chicago landmark apart from Lake Michigan.
Oh yeah, and this takes place in Chicago. Sorry, New Chicago.
How do we feel about New Chicago?
Terrible portmanteau.
Why?
Just leave the name.
Or if you have to, New Chicago. No one is saying New Chicago. It's got bad mouthfeel.
Wait, why can't we do Steel Chicago? What? Yeah. Why would it not be Steel Chicago? Also, I think it was either Walton or one of my other friends. I was like, yeah, it's like Chicago, but if they turned it entirely into steel. And then it was like, well, what's the city that's like the steel? Like,
the steel city?
I feel like there was a missed opportunity with Pittsburgh here.
Yeah, you could have done Pittsburgh.
Oh my God, you're right. I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah. That's the other thing of like, this feels largely placeless, because like the climax, while it does take place in Soldier Field and like Lake Michigan is mentioned, and the fact that Steelheart's palace is on Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
I do wish there was more of that present, because largely this book doesn't take place on Earth. It doesn't take place in Chicago. It takes place in a culmination of like 12 different YA worlds. Because like, and honestly, like once we hit like the 5th or 6th trope in like the first 3 chapters, I was like, okay, we're just like in trope land, and I was able to more acquiesce to that, and I was more willing to put up with some of the bullshit, because it's like, oh, we're simultaneously doing evil superheroes, which is its own sort of YA subgenre, and then we're doing, oh, there's a secret underground world, that's the Undercity, and stuff like that, and then we're doing a weird YA description of class in a way that is bottom of the barrel. You had something to say, Jack.
I just want to say, one is, like, I've been to Chicago and Soldier Field. For that to be, Soldier Field to be the edge of the whole, like, turning to steel, means it's basically just downtown Chicago is turned to steel. Like, Chicago's a big fucking city. Yeah. A lot bigger than the part of it that would have been turned to steel in all of this. So ostensibly, most of Chicago is actually still not steel. Second, I just want to flag, because I thought that was funny. It kept coming up. Like when we get into more like descriptions of the world and how things have changed. At time of this book starting, epics have only existed for 12 years.
Everything that's happened is way too fast.
That's what I mean. It's like society has completely restructured itself in a radical way, in like a specific radical way. Also, this is not about like the world building so much, but there's a random line mentioning how Steelheart looks exactly as young as he did on that day. Epics age more slowly. And my one note was, how do you know? It's only been 12 years. How do you know epics age more slowly? What?
Yeah, what?
What do you mean?
A lot of people look like they look 10 years ago.
What do you mean they age more slowly?
Paul Rudd has looked the same age for 30 years.
Paul Rudd's an epic.
Paul Rudd's confirmed. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to flag that. Like, everything we're talking about, how radically different the world is now, that all occurred in 12 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people just accepted dictatorship. They just like accepted.
I did like the acknowledgement of the U.S. government, in the sense that like he didn't just hand wave that the U.S. government is now gone. It actually did a whole like, the U.S. government tried to control epics, couldn't, and so like basically signed a bill saying they can do what they want, and technically the US government still exists, it's just might as well not.
Yeah
I like that acknowledgement. I'm not sure I totally agree or I'm a fan of it. Like I think it was a perfect way to do it, but I like the acknowledgement of just like, no, like the governments didn't just disappear, there was like a like steps, at least.
Mm-hmm. Let's finish our points about New Chicago, because I have one more point about that, and then we can move on to either David's characterization or Taylor wanting to go to the prologue. So, a couple other things. Slants is bad. Every fake swear is bad.
Oh, I kept trying to understand what that meant.
I have no idea what slants is, but like slants and sparks, I think there's one more. But
Calamity.
Like, well, it's very natural that new slang would have emerged, because like I feel like there's new slang every week. I feel so old when I'm on the internet.
You're so right.
We're in our 20s, by the
way. But like those specifically, like somehow relating to the superpowers, I'm like, no, that's bad. Like that wouldn't have happened. Like, people would not have developed new swear words relating to the superheroes. They probably would just keep being like, fuck, okay.
Yeah, remember, 12 years. It's been 12 years. It's not like we're
Let
like...
David say fuck.
Let David say fuck. That's all I have to say.
The other thing is, like, David is, like, weirdly grateful for his factory slavery upbringing.
So true.
I don't know. I feel like 8 is old enough to know on some level right from wrong. So the fact that
he was chill about his slavery.
Yeah, he was totally chill about his slavery, and he was like, it was good I was enslaved, actually, because the alternative was starvation. Can we is really bad.
There's other things, like they have a whole conversation where Megan's like, how do you know what bananas are? And I was like, what? He was 8. I think most 5-year-olds know what a banana is. What are you talking about?
David's answer is not, I ate bananas. His answer is, oh, I read about them in an encyclopedia.
Yeah, exactly. I was like losing my mind.
Everyone in this book acts like they've all grown up and lived their entire life under epic rule.
Yes.
Even though many of them talk about their lives before like the collapse. Like Cody is like, oh yeah, I was a police officer in Nashville, and like I had like a long career of that before the epics arrived, and I decided that like I had to outside of this system.
But then people act like the way they talk, the way they speak, the way they do all that stuff. But you're right. Like Prof was a teacher, like a middle school teacher or something.
Grade school.
Megan was just like a kid in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess maybe not a kid since epics age slowly. So maybe she's been 20 for the last 12 years.
You're right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
The rules only apply when he says they apply.
The other thing that I think is really annoying is the beginning of chapter 23. There is a moment where I'm just going to read the exchange. Megan says, "Takes a lot of work," she said, and then sipped on her drink. "It only looks easy, just like abstract art." I grunted. "Abstract art?" I asked, heaving onto the rope. "Sure, you know, a guy paints a black line on a canvas, calls it a metaphor, sells it for millions. That never happened." She looked up at me amused. "Sure it did. You never learned about abstract art in school?" "I was schooled at the factory," I said. "Basic math, reading, geography, history. Wasn't time for anything else. But before that, before the calamity." "I was 8, I said. I lived in inner city Chicago, Megan. My education mostly involved learning how to avoid gangs and how to keep my head down in school." This is horseshit.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Okay, so
That's crazy.
This is horseshit.
Anyone that has ever if any of our listeners have lived in inner city Chicago.
Well, for the record,
Do you know what abstract art is?
Do you know what abstract art is?
That is part of it. Almost certainly. I mean, Chicago has many world-class museums. Like the Bean is famously an example of like that's technically abstract art. I mean, it's technically in a different tradition, but you know, like all these sorts of things. The other thing like that's going on here is like I don't think this is foregrounded very well at all, but David is black. Like he's described as having brown skin. And
wait, he is?
Yeah, he's described
There's
as
no way.
I missed that.
He's described as having brown skin, and he's described as I believe his father is also described as having brown skin, although I could be misremembering. But like David is a black kid from Chicago, and his father is very poor. So like obviously he's going to have a different upbringing. Class and race are going to be very, very present there. However, if you are poor, you still know what bananas are. Like, you can still go to one of Chicago's many world-class free museums or, like, donation wave museums. Even very poor schools can go to, can do a field trip to something that's free. There's also a mention of David's father being homeless, and that one I was like, wait, no, that's not right, because he's getting a mortgage. So, like, he's not homeless. Presumably he has a place to live. He just doesn't own a home. Those words mean different things.
I love that. He's homeless. He paid rent. We're all homeless.
Yeah, apparently. So yeah, that was like a really weird emergence of like real world class and race. And also David is not at all culturally black. And I mean like, who knows? Like, you don't have a ton of time to develop like who you are at 8, but there's still some element of it there. And I imagine like the Midwest is a very segregated part of America in a way that I think a lot of people don't realize. Like, if I gave you a list of what you thought the most segregated cities in America, I imagine a bunch of southern cities would come up. But the most segregated city in America is Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. There's like one road that divides
basically the whole city.
And
even neighborhood by neighborhood, there's some pretty harsh redlining. The Chicago that many people visit is not the same Chicago that many people live in. Like, it is still a relatively violent city and has perpetual crime and, like, huge, like, class divisions and wealth inequality and stuff like that. However, like, none of that is in this book. And, like, here's the thing. I probably don't want it to be in this book because I don't think Sanderson would handle it very well. Like, I don't think that Sanderson is going to have a particularly interesting viewpoint on race in America. However, this is like his first black protagonist, and it's a black protagonist in the real world. I
definitely missed that.
Yeah,
I did as well.
And like once again, he could be something other than black, but when we have a person of color who is not specifically Asian American or Indian American, that's made mention of. Like Conflex is an Indian American superhero, and Nightwielder is Japanese. The fact that it isn't mentioned, I'm like, well, I mean, I guess this is like he's a black kid from Chicago, I guess.
Yeah, no, I definitely missed that and did not read him as black. I will say that I mixed up. Okay, there's a character who is a Black Canadian man named Abraham.
Yes.
And when they were describing Abraham, I thought they were describing Prof. So I read Prof as Black for a very long time until I realized that he was not wanting me to do that. But then in my head, I kind of kept Prof as Black. So at the end of the day, it didn't really matter.
I also read John as like having darker skin, but is that in the book? But yes, I mean, David is broadly unraced throughout all of this, but the fact that
absolutely,
I'm sure, like, honestly, it wouldn't even shock me if, like, there's only, like, a singular mention of this. But, like, it's largely not important, but it is weird that your first Black character is like, I grew up in inner city Chicago. I don't know what art is or a banana is. Anyway, we can move on from the Chicago stuff. We spent a while on it.
I'll go with the characterization, though. The thing that frustrated me the most of this book, and I think is the reason I'm generally negative towards it, because I kept reading it and kept kind of going a little insane about this, is how David is characterized. We actually touched on it a little bit where, like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, what do you mean he doesn't know what a banana is? That doesn't make sense. But David rapidly oscillates between, like, a CIA operative level spy and a teenage boy.
Mm-hmm.
He has one of his main characters, like, his pitch for joining the Reckoners and the reason he, like, essentially actually is useful to them is because he has apparently collected and compiled massive amounts of very well-developed intel and theories about epics across the country, not just New Chicago, like across the whole country. Like, he knows, he has data, he has photos, he has interviews, he has descriptions, he has all of this stuff, and he's able to piece together like this very complex understanding of how the different epic powers works. He has his own classification system. He knows what a lot of their weaknesses is. He's able to determine...
If the calamity had not happened, David for sure would have been a wiki author.
Exactly. And the thing is, it's like a level of intel, which is like, he knows that Firefight is an illusionist. Like, not because so the idea is one of Steelheart's like lieutenants is Firefight, who's like a fire epic, basically someone that he's Johnny Storm. Yeah, just a person that's always on fire and blah blah blah, and it's like really dangerous. But David has figured out, and it's not figured out by like he happened to have seen something and come to this realization, figured out through careful, essentially spy work, like intel gathering and putting things together, that Firefight is actually an illusion. Someone else is just hanging out nearby and creating the illusion of a fire epic. And this is something that the Reckoners, a borderline professional group of insurgents who have not been living as a factory slave for the last 10 years and have been like out and about running insurgencies, did not know. Or like could not figure out. And then also there's all these random lines where he says things like he hated illusionist epics. You never knew where they'd be, as if he'd fought them before. But no, he hasn't ever fought. Right. He hasn't ever fought epics before. He just daydreamed about it. He just grew up in a weapons factory. And Graham, you pointed out in my notes that it does make sense that he knows how to fire a gun, but still, it's like he was a kid working in a weapons factory, and he talks like he's a grizzled epic hunter. Like,
yeah, no, he does not have the clout that he does, but it makes sense that he understands how to fire and like is reasonably good with his weapon.
Sure, that part makes sense. But and then in other scenes, he's clearly a child. Like, there's a whole scene where he is confronted with the fact where he's like, wait, why is Steelheart being a dictator? Why is he doing that? And like, it's like a very basic, like he like a teenage perspective on the world and why powerful people do what they do that he hasn't thought about.
Yeah.
It's very, like I said, the characterization kept bothering me because at some points he would be this like competent, like CIA operative, like epic hunter. And then other times it's no, he's a teenage boy.
I do think that David is overly competent generally throughout the text. I think he has like one too many skills. Like, if he was just a crack shot or he had just the knowledge of epics or something like that, I think that would be fine. But he kind of fills too many members of the team because, like, you could cut Tia and have this book be like exactly the same because Tia's knowledge is... I mean, Tia's only plan is the side plot that doesn't really pan out, where there's like, Steelheart's kryptonite must be in the bank vault, and like, no, of course it doesn't.
Yeah, Tia's basically her only function is as like the man in the chair, and she kind of lets dialogue continue by like being like, oh, go this way, go that way, and like, she's like basically just someone that they could play off of, and wasn't actually in the wasn't actually getting like gunned down all the time. So like I also agree. I just to respond to that, I think that him knowing Steelheart's weakness was like, I feel like there was a book where that was enough to get him on the team. Is that just like, he didn't need to be like an expert in all epics, but him knowing that like Steelheart has a weakness and like he has
having
this
a clue,
information could
like
be
actually
enough.
having a clue to it, yeah.
Because he's like such a crack shot. You're right.
Or maybe his contribution to team is he just knows New Chicago. Like he just is
True.
Yeah. Like that is a very like YA trope of like, I know the Undercity, follow me if you want to survive. Like, yeah. Like I have certainly read a book like that as a child.
Yeah, and he didn't even end up filling that niche either because he barely knew. He would get into these understreets and be like, oh, I don't know where to go. Like, that was actually Tia's job.
Like at first I was a little like, oh, this is kind of interesting, where he like tracked down, he like figured out when the Reckoners were going to hit the precog guy. I forgot his name.
Fortuity is just Spider-Man without the webs, which I thought was fun. Of like our first like person we have to take out is Spider-Man.
Real quick.
That is fun.
To give an idea of how kind of goofy comic book things is this, a lot of the powers are pretty much normal superpowers. Like some guy can see a little bit into the future and so he can like dodge bullets and then has like crazy reflexes. Steelheart flies by like bending wind around him and has energy blasts. Night Wielder like makes shadows into spears and like can travel through walls. And then there's a guy whose his superpower is that when he's holding a handgun, it has infinite ammo. That's his superpower. Like that's just it. Like it's literally just if he has a hand, which means like the superpower recognizes the specific gun you're holding. It doesn't work if he's using a rifle. And then also on the goofiness, all epics have a weakness, and the weakness is not some kind of like, oh, you know, put out the fires. It's like a kryptonite level weakness. It's like in the proximity of this thing, their powers turn off and they're like just a normal person again. And for some of them, it's like a thing, like some epics, like they see something or like there's a certain object. With Night Wielder, it's UV light, which I thought was actually kind of clever. Steelheart, it's a person who doesn't fear him. And then sometimes it's shit like Fortuity's weakness is that his power doesn't work on people he's sexually attracted to. Or doesn't work as well. Like,
although if I was Fortuity, I would simply like not surround myself with people I was attracted to, because like
he was doing that a lot.
He had girls on his arms. It was like, that seems like it'd be a problem for you, dude. Of right. Like they should have just been able to shoot you because your power was turned off when you had like a bunch of girls on your arms.
That's also an inconsistent application of the powers, because all the other weaknesses have been like when you're even in the proximity of it, your powers turn off. Then he was like, no, his power just didn't work to see what someone he was attracted to was going to do. I don't fucking know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we'll probably get elaboration on the weaknesses in subsequent books, but also I think this is all in line with sort of the goofier aspects of comic book.
I'm not saying as a diss. I just think it's funny.
Famously, this is a joke that's older than both all of us and our audience. Everyone has made this joke about Green Lantern and the fact that the oldest version of Green Lantern was weak to wood. The reboot of Green Lantern was weak to yellow. You could take them both out with a number 2 pencil. Like that's sort of the goofy element of comic books as well. So like the weakness is fine. I do think that there is a lot of time wasted on, as Taylor was saying, of like Steelheart's kryptonite, and clearly it's something else.
We'll get into this more, but yeah, like a big question of the plot is they want to kill Steelheart, but they don't know his weakness, and they know it, and we'll get into it more with the prologue, but they know it has something to do with that bank vault, or like the event where David saw him bleed.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We should also go back briefly a little bit to the characterization, because we've alluded to the terrible metaphors, but like I don't think we've actually discussed them in depth. Like Jack made the joke of like, my mind flipped like a pancake on a griddle. One of David's few like actual character traits is he makes these terrible metaphors and they're all abysmal, and like sort of the joke is like, oh, he's bad at this, so it's funny. And it's like, no, these are like largely just bad. And like I could see them working in Alcatraz maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Apparently that started just because Brandon Sanderson acted like while just writing a draft, like wrote a really bad metaphor, was like, oh, that's bad. But then he was like, no, actually, this is funny. And then made that
No, like, and we could tell.
Yeah, we could tell.
Like, I was reading this and I was like, you cannot just like cover up your bad writing by saying it's like
drawing attention to your bad choice does not make it clever.
Exactly. And like, maybe I would like it a little bit more if it was consistent with every metaphor that he uses, because I was reading this book like, okay, well, that was a good metaphor. Why is it good? Like, why? Like, why are we just... And then it was like it was like a good unmentioned metaphor. And I was like, okay, so what's the joke? What's the joke here? Let's see if I can find one, because I did like write down like question mark, that's a good metaphor.
Take a second and see if you can find that. Because broadly, they're worse than the pancake on a griddle one, broadly.
Most of them just made so there was some that just like actually didn't make sense as a metaphor, and then there was the ones that were just like they made sense but they were just bad. Like the pancake on a griddle one's like, okay, that makes sense in the context. It's just really fucking weird.
Yeah.
While Taylor's searching for that, on characterization, Megan.
Yeah, this is the worst part of the book by far.
The sacrificial lamb of objectification in this book.
Completely.
I am so mad about the character Megan. So she is the like basically of age of David on the Reckoners. He sees her and immediately starts talking about how hot she is.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things he sees her do is she like takes off like the dress she was using as a disguise, and underneath has like normal, like I think like athletic wear clothes basically. And then when he first talks to her, he's like, oh, thanks for that striptease earlier. That's the actual word used. The whole book is like, it's all David's perspective. He's so focused on how hot Megan is and how attracted he is to her. And meanwhile, he is like the worst. Like he talks to her, he disrespects her. He acts like a hormonal teenage kid with his first crush. In like a bad way, like in a way that he never had like older friends or a dad to tell him, hey, that's weird, don't act that way. And then suddenly by the end of the book, Megan's actually into him, and that made me annoyed.
Well, of course.
There was literally the entire book was Megan actively disliking him because he was being like misogynistic and creepy and weird. And at the end it's like, oh psych, she actually likes him. There's one scene where David is trying to convince the Reckoners to like go with this plan to kill Steelheart, and the prof goes, no, don't convince me, convince Megan. Megan gets one line of dialogue and then doesn't speak the rest of the chapter, and then the rest of the Reckoners agree to do it.
But not Megan.
Halfway through this chapter, yes, Megan doesn't speak again. I went back and looked.
Yeah.
The whole scene began with Prof, who's the leader of this group, saying, don't convince me, convince Megan. The reason being is because Megan's the one who's the most opposed to doing some plan to kill Steelheart.
And then like the next chapter, it's like, isn't it great that Megan is so agreeable even though she doesn't like the plan?
No, and that whole scene, it's just like, convince Megan. And he starts talking to Megan. Megan gives one rebuttal. He like talks again, and then he keeps talking, and then it just seamlessly switches to no, he's actually talking to Prof. And then at the end of that scene, Prof goes, okay, sure, we'll do it. And Megan doesn't come back again.
Right.
Despite it being like the whole point of the scene being, don't convince me, convince Megan.
Right. Yeah, no, David immediately was like, okay, I'm actually going to just ignore what Prof just said. I don't have to convince Megan. I'm actually just convincing Prof. And then I was like, okay, well, that's a bad strategy. You're doing exactly what he said not to do just 1 second ago. And then at the end of it, he was like, David was completely right. All he had to do was convince Prof and not Megan. And I was like, well, this ultimately makes Prof seem like a spineless loser. And it's like, is that really what you wanted Prof to like end up as? At the end of the day, I did think that this scene was getting really fucking long, and I was like ready for it to end as well. So I can see why Sanderson was like, I don't really want to like convince Megan because that's going to take too long. It's like, I get it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, just rewrite it, ? Yeah, you can go back and rewrite it if it's getting too long. You could just make it so that he somehow convinces Megan.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to hit send.
In my notes I have sins against Megan. The first one being David's general existence. But one last thing about it is there's a scene where, like, you know, Megan dies. It's like they're in this big high-speed chase. They get hurt. Megan's like unconscious and dying. They do get out, but then they're unable to heal her and save her. She dies. But while David's trapped and Megan's like dying and he's like dragging her to safety, he gives this whole love confession to her. This is the love confession that she then listens to after she resurrects and has lost her memory, and kind of convinces her not to just, kill David. But while she is unconscious and dying, she didn't look good. She wasn't moving. Her eyes were closed and her helmet was cracked, only halfway on. Blood trailed down her cheek. It was the color of her lips. And more lines come up where there's some other line where he's like, I'm trying to find the exact line. I think I just stopped highlighting them because I was getting sick of it. But she's literally dead and he's still talking about how hot she is.
And then he gives a whole speech about how much he loves her, woman I've known for
2
less
weeks.
than a month.
Something like that.
Go ahead.
Okay, how about there was a time when it was him and Megan together and they were going into the power plant and fucking grown ass man Cody was in his ear and he was like, I see you looking at her cleavage.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, both of you? Jail. Why is this grown-ass man talking about that? Straight to jail. And then they bring it up again.
It's technically she's 20 or something and David's 18, but then
oh
Cody's
my God,
in his 30s
I wouldn't care
or
if she was
40s.
30. I wouldn't care if she was 30. Stop talking about her cleavage. That's weird. That is just weird, period. It doesn't matter what age she is.
Every single time it mentioned Megan threw on her lab
tight
coat,
shirt.
it looked good on her.
Yeah.
I'm just going to random highlights of the random lines, and they're all just gross. They're all just really gross. And I can already hear someone online saying well, it makes sense in character because this is from David's perspective and he's a hormonal 18-year-old boy that's never had a girlfriend. And it's okay, it still makes me feel physical pain reading it, so I'd rather it not be here.
Even in terms of that sort of thing, I don't think this is a particularly good version of that. Because, don't get me wrong, you can write about a character who is extremely hormonal and teenaged and awkward around women and is, I don't know how to control my own desire. But, this is not it. It's so cartoonish that it fully doesn't capture any of that. One of the things that I think is actually quite good about YA novels is, there's a lot of yearning and a lot of, particularly YA romance of oh God, I love how this person looks and I don't know what to do with these feelings. There's a lot of that in YA fiction. So the fact that there isn't any of this here, particularly the fact that it's never really reciprocated until Megan is basically dead.
Yeah.
And the speech he gives specifically of her death being there, and it's I think I love you, is I think inarguably the worst thing Sanderson has put into a book.
Yeah, it's real bad.
God, I keep talking about the whole I am excited to see Brandon Sanderson get better because I know he gets better. I know he is capable of writing more thoughtful, empathetically about characters that are different than himself, characters that are queer or disabled or women. And I know he becomes better at this, and I keep waiting for that to happen, and it hasn't. And this book feels like a backslide in that regard.
Deeply.
It's very hard to believe that this is the same dude who wrote Vin, despite all of Vin's foibles and failures in terms of representation.
No, exactly.
Taylor, you sound like you have another point.
No, I totally agree. I think that Megan is, deeply strange direction for Sanderson to go in. And there was a moment where Cody and Tia were having some banter, and I literally wrote you do not get to write a B plot romance if you can't fucking deal with your A plot romance. Can we focus up here? Can we stop going in different directions? You can't even. Every time I read some of these books, I'm just Sanderson, just read a romance novel, please, and take some notes. It's not that hard. There are so much resources for you. It doesn't have to be this way.
Absolutely. And not even just you don't have to read exclusively a romance novel. It's just there are plenty of heroic fiction that have all-time great relationships. And I know that Sanderson is fans of some of these things.
It's just, to me, what he focuses on is so off-putting. I think that he's writing this, and to me it's not true to an 18-year-old. I wish he thought a little bit more about what it was actually like to be 18 and not just obsessed and grossly obsessed with just physical appearance. I wish. And then I think that he makes this mistake over and over again where the only thing his male main characters find in the women that they're supposed to be interested in is their physical appearance.
And like, to me, that's not really the basis of an actual romance. And so like, when it actually culminates into romance, I just don't believe it. Like, I'm not bought into it.
Yeah.
I wish the catalyst of all these relationships wasn't physical, because I just don't think it's very true. I think that it's very like...
We have a very brief moment where I think we could have seen a different version of this, because I think David and Megan have very little chemistry throughout most of the book. This isn't not like an Alcatraz and Bastille situation where it's like, oh, these kids really like each other, but, you know, they're kids.
Yeah.
It's more like there's a scene where David makes a horrendous pun that I can't even remember the context of. And like, this makes Megan laugh really, really hard. And like says like there's an artistry to bad puns and that sort of thing. Like, this is a moment of like, oh, they have chemistry, and it's like, no, not really. I don't think like Megan has not suffered fools lightly throughout this whole thing, so for her to finally be like, oh, bad puns, I'm actually huge on. But there's a like very brief exchange right after where they're talking shop about guns, and they're talking about the fact that David is like, oh, I really like my rifle and I don't care for handguns, and Megan is like, no, the handgun is a much better tool to have and be skilled with. And they have this moment of like talking shop and like criticizing each other's choice of weapon. And I actually thought that was like a good bit of back and forth banter. And I wish the sort of revelation there is like, oh, we work together really well, actually. There's a lot that we can sort of like disagree on in the specifics, but like, you know, we're both crack shots, we're both really competent operatives, and like I could see that as the foundation for a romance in a way that never really emerges, because like literally the next couple pages is Megan dying.
Yeah.
Right.
God, I hate to say it, Vin and Ellen's romance was actually way better and more believable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Vin and Ellen's romance at all, but I think like at least there was an attempt.
Yeah.
The reason I want to draw that comparison is because that was a book he wrote like 5 or 6 years earlier than this book.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a lot of reasons to compare it to Mistborn. It's a heist crew with superpowers trying to put... It's very much like the same kind of basic genre of plot. I think something I wrote down, and it's interesting because something Brandon Sanderson will talk about with Mistborn often is the fact that he put so much effort into making sure Vin was a realistic, well-written female character that he forgot to put any other women in the heist crew. And now in this book, he put 2 women in the heist crew. The female representation is way worse. So I wonder if, not to dig too much into like, I guess like the biography, like what his mindset was, I wonder if that just wasn't on his mind as much because it wasn't a female main character, that he was way more cognizant of like, I need to be on top of this because it's the main perspective character is a woman, versus this where Megan is a side character. Megan's not the main character.
I don't know. She's your second lead. She should be better than that.
And also Bastille's better.
Taylor, go ahead.
No, truly, I don't mean to be a hater, but the only thing I've learned from this podcast is that you only need to write like maybe 4 good first books and you can get away with anything.
Yeah.
Like these books we've been reading, guys.
It's been a bad year.
How did this get to print? Like, I get this isn't Tor. This is Ember. This isn't Tor. And like in Tor, we truly trust, because what the Ember, guys, be for real. Why'd you publish this?
No, that's actually something
Let's
I
go
put
back
in
to
my...
get some
Well,
edits.
I mean, to go to the strengths of the books, I mean, like a lot of the characterization and representation stuff is quite bad, but also like, again, moment by moment, I think the plot it really, really moves along. And I think that's the reason it got published. Like, I understand not liking this book and having a lot of objections with it, but like, this is one of the first times where I was like, oh, I fully see what a lot of people see reading Mistborn in this. Because I think this is much tighter paced than Mistborn. Again, there's a lot of downtime and scenes that I don't like in Mistborn. Vin and Ellen's romance, or moments where, I guess I'm thinking more of like the follow-up books, but there's a lot of downtime in those books that I don't particularly care for. In this, it's like, all right, we have one plan, and that plan leads into the next plan, and the next plan leads into the follow-up plan, and then there isn't really there's never more than like a chapter or half a chapter of downtime before they're executing a new like kinetic action scene that leads into the next one.
Yeah.
That's the reason it got published. But like,
yeah.
again, like the book on a whole
On that point, I actually wrote some notes about this, Taylor, like what you're saying about like, oh, wrote a few good first books and then kind of got bad. You've said before, like you've referred to like, oh, we're in Brandon Sanderson's like slop era or whatever. I was looking at the bibliography because it really does feel like the year of writing has been really odd for Sanderson, because he did have a first couple of like really good books, and I know he has good books coming up, but then the last like this entire year of the podcast has been a lot of like us going like, well, this was kind of weird and all over the place. Of the last 14 things he's written that we have covered, basically since Way of Kings, which we covered, only 3 have been Cosmere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one was a 10-page short story.
Yeah, and one of those 3 Cosmere things was 10 pages. And this is also when he was like finishing up Wheel of Time, which obviously is like a huge undertaking. This really does feel, I wonder if there's something to be said of this is like essentially an era of Sanderson where so much of his creative energy is going into finishing Wheel of Time that he's just not putting as much love and attention into his own works. And maybe this is also a period of like discovery, like, because this is before he truly has become like the Cosmere author. Mm-hmm. Like if you scroll down to the end of the bibliography, it becomes everything's Cosmere, except for like occasional like little thing, like there's something with the Cytoverse.
Mm-hmm.
I think
a random secret project. So this is we're still before he's become the Cosmere author. And so this feels like it's a period of his writing career where he's almost like still trying to figure out who he is before he goes back to like Cosmere stuff.
Yeah, I definitely think, I don't think so much this book or The Rhythmatist felt burnout, but I did feel like there were definitely a few books we read, especially like the Infinity Blade stuff, or like what was the weird one with the
Legion?
Legion. Like I that felt like very burned out to me. These ones just kind of feel like he's trying. Look, at the end of the day, I think it's worth mentioning that we're only 2 months away from the top-rated book on Goodreads of all time. So,
Words of Radiance.
It's gonna like Words of Radiance. Like, I have faith that we're gonna get there. I think you're right. Like, something happened. Also, at the end of this book, he does mention how he does, in his acknowledgments, say he has 3 sons. So that might have also been happening where he had 3 boys, back to back to back, which, you know, or I don't know how back to back it was, but obviously having a baby doesn't lend itself to a lot of sleeping or downtime.
Yeah.
So I can also see how that might have been something that was going on as well.
There could be any number of biographical reasons for like why his sort of output turns out this way. But I think like what's interesting about this year is we've had some very low lows, but we've also had some very high highs. Like, at least for me, again, I think that The Emperor's Soul is still my favorite thing that he's written. And I think it's probably his most mature effort. And then while I definitely see a ton of backsliding in Steelheart, in other ways I'm like, this also shows some of his most refined writing. And also, like, I don't think this book was a paycheck for him. He clearly had a lot of fun writing this.
Oh, I agree. This one doesn't give, like, I need a paycheck. This one was, like...
Yeah.
There was something going on here. Yeah. And I think it's just, like, me also comparing it to The Rhythmatist as well, which I really, really wanted... Like, I feel more. Like we talked about, The Rhythmatist, but, like... To me, I was kind of sad that like it clearly just needed a bit more time, because there was like a lot of good bits in there that I really liked, and I just wish there was a bit more. Like I felt like he was maybe on too tight a deadline or something like that.
Let's think about how insane a 2013 that Sanderson had, because these are the things that he put out in 2013. He puts out A Memory of Light.
Jesus.
And then he puts out The Rhythmatist as well. So like 2 novels, one of them being over 1,000 pages. That's an incredible effort in a single year. He puts out 1, 2, 5 novellas and short stories. And then also Steelheart. So, like, if we're looking for a singular reason as to why one book feels like, or several of these books feel like they needed a second draft, or maybe we're not as good as we were looking for, or just like needed a little more time. That's the reason. Like three novel-ass novels came out in a single year, and then 3 short stories and 2 novellas.
Very productive. We don't know the exact reason this era of Sanderson feels this way. It definitely does feel like this is a specific era of Sanderson.
Yeah.
That we're going to get past. Like Taylor said, we're going to get to Words of Radiance.
I'm actually starting it like very soon because I'm worried about its length and my capacity to finish it.
We actually, before we get to another big Cosmere book, we do have the sequel to this book, actually.
Yeah.
It's called Firefight, though, so it should be interesting.
Firefight, yeah.
I'm interested in that one. I think, as I said before we were recording, I think the sequels to this book are not going to be as good, particularly because like I fully expect David to have powers probably by the end of book 3, but maybe by the end of book 2, given what we've seen with the Mistborn trilogy. I think I'm going to like the book significantly less when that happens.
What should we talk about next?
I actually have a point about Megan's death and sort of the action scene surrounding it. One thing about Megan's death, I actually think the interaction with Megan's dead body and getting her back to base, really good. Like, the scene just before it, truly one of the worst things he's ever written. But the fact that Megan is basically dead, and David is like, you can fix this, right? I think is a very true to... It was one of the few times where I was like, oh, he's just a kid. And I actually felt sympathetic to the character. Like, I didn't feel emotional during the scene because I had no attachment to Megan because she's not written very compellingly, unfortunately. The scene itself is, like, very human because David's objections are not, oh my god, she's dead, and this will fuel my big tragic moment, which I think we get a lot of in Sanderson's fantasy stuff of, like, Kelsier's wife dies, and like this pain is so great that he becomes a Mistborn, and like you'll never understand his pain. Whereas David's moment is like, oh, she doesn't look right, and covers part of her body with a sheet because the body doesn't look right. And I think that's an extremely human moment of interacting with death. That I really liked. And the fact that he keeps saying, like, I could have been faster, when Tia has said to him multiple times, if you got her here the second she went down, it wouldn't have mattered. Like, she probably would have died anyway. But even from that point on, he keeps going, I could have been faster. And I think that's like a really interesting, very grounded human interaction with death that Sanderson normally doesn't do. He operates in a much more operatic sort of mode. So to see something like that, I really enjoyed. I really, really liked that. And then I actually sort of had a revelation about Sanderson action while examining that chase sequence in particular, because the sequence itself is pretty cool. They're on motorcycles that have like limited gravity powers. They're escaping a factory that they just blew up. While the action on the page was very cool, and we also have Proth like using the weird gloves that they have for the first time, which he doesn't use. Yeah. He doesn't use the tensors for whatever reason. It's revealed, oh, it's because he's an epic and this power will corrupt him. But, like, he is blocking bullets out of the air. At a certain point, he, like, punches a wall, and he's so good with them that he can get a sword, and he, like, cuts a dude in half with it. And it's like, all that is kind of fun.
So cool.
But I think this actually reveals that, despite what I have said about, like, sometimes Sanderson really has the sauce, I think most of the action that works for me is where there is still more of an emotional context to them. Because, like, I think about, like, Sanderson's best fight scenes, and I think about Kelsier versus the Steel Inquisitor, or later on in that same series, Vin versus, like, 12 Steel Inquisitors and killing them all at the same time, or Dalinar soloing the Chasm Fiend. Even Wax and Wayne versus the Wedding Bandits tell more of a story in this sort of big action sequence. And I think I am realizing that, like, this is some of his best action in terms of, like, description. Everything is really coherent. There are some cool moments in it. And even still, I didn't really care about it in a way where most Sanderson action scenes, I'm like, oh, sweet, we're going to have some sauce here. This is going to be great. Because, like, even though it's one of Sanderson's most confident, coherent, and well-written scenes in the book, I'm still sort of walking away from it like, why didn't I like that as much? And I think the answer is just, like, we don't have an attachment to any of these characters. And also, without that attachment to those characters, I think the sort of stripped back, really sort of coherent, clear action scenes that he has are less compelling. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome when Dalinar grabs the claw of that Chasm Fiend and, like, prevents it from killing his nephew. But, like, part of the reason that scene is awesome is just because of how much we care about Dalinar. And I'm realizing that, like, no matter how cool the scene is, like, it has to be within the sort of character context.
You have to care, yeah.
From what I'm hearing of this, kind of seems like you also need to be at least interested in what and who they're fighting, like the villain side of it.
Mhm.
And, like, these enforcement officers definitely did not provide.
No.
Because you were talking about the Steel Inquisitors and, you know, the Chasm Fiend and like even
The Wedding Bandit.
yeah, even the Wedding Bandits were an interesting. They had like some sort of character. There was at least characterization. There was a name. They were named in some way.
And also, like, you get a ton of information about, like, who our character is from the fight. Yeah, that is actually a great point, because, I mean, despite this book being called Steelheart, we really don't spend a ton of time with him outside of the prologue. We see him do, like, one big villainous thing, which sometimes is enough, but, like, you know, most of our actual villains, they don't have any, like, cool personality or aesthetic or presence. And then we often get told they killed 100 million people. They're so evil.
Yeah.
But we never actually see it.
Yeah, Steelheart was kind of a Lord Ruler figure in the story. Like, he was in the background. He definitely had a presence in the sense of, like, oh, everything bad is because of him. But then all of the lieutenant, like in Mistborn, we had the Inquisitors, who were kind of like the lieutenants that were the actual threat that we actually encountered and had to deal with.
Who are cool.
Which were way more interesting compared to, like, Nightwielder, who... I mean, what do we get out of Nightwielder? He's a stereotypical Japanese man who floats through walls and will kill people.
Yeah, and he's kind of a coward, too. Like, the minute that they figure out... yeah, the minute they figure out, like, his weakness, he doesn't, like, get super mad and, like, fight double. He, like, runs away. He, like, actually runs away.
This book would have been stronger with stronger villains. Yeah, my point is over. What do we want to move on to? Because we were talking about the Steelheart being the exception to having, like, a real villainous act. Do we want to hit the prologue?
Sure.
Yeah.
Taylor, what do you have to say?
My thing about the prologue is how it was written. Like I said before, I think there's a version of this that works. I think there's a prologue that would work. I just think that it had to be what David told the Reckoners, because this was clearly not, I don't know, the way that he told the story of the prologue was clearly that, to me, like, we zoomed in pretty hard on the dad and what the dad said. So I was like, the narrative lent itself to the fact that, like, something was going on there and that was the mystery. Whereas I feel like if he had written the prologue the way that he had talked to the Reckoners about it, we would have zoomed in really hard on the bank vault. We would have zoomed in really hard on this gun that his dad had. Like, we would have zoomed in on all these, all the different parts of the mystery so that we could actually have pieces of the puzzle to, like, there would actually be some sort of mystery there where, like, it, like, I wanted him to convince me in the prologue that it could be the bank vault. Like, that's what needed to happen. Like, I needed him to convince me that it could be the gun. Like I needed these pieces. There need to be more pieces, because then I felt like there was a lot of back and forth that didn't matter, because I knew reading the prologue that the only point that mattered was the exchange between his father and Steelheart, because that was the only thing we really zoomed in on and really got, like, word for word what happened.
Yeah.
That's where I thought that the prologue totally, I would say it ruined a lot of the book for me. I think that if it hadn't happened, that I would be a lot more interested in a lot of the more downtime scenes, where I was very uninterested in the downtime scenes because I felt like everyone was being a little bit dumb.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, if he had told the Reckoners that story in the way that he told it, there's, like, to me, it seems like obviously our first lead should be what his dad said. Not the first lead should not be the bank vault. That doesn't make any sense.
I do think that if you were going to do all this downtime, there should have been a hard misdirect of, like, his dad being a member of the Faithful, and, like, really lean into that and have that be David's idea rather than someone else's. I think it's Proft's idea.
Yeah.
If you had that be David's conclusion, it's like, you have to truly and earnestly believe this. I think that would be a good misdirect and would make some of the mystery more satisfying. You may not necessarily know exactly that it's David's dad being unafraid of Steelheart.
Yeah.
You get the idea that, it has something to do with his perspective, for sure.
I did write down at that part where they suggested it, only true believers of Christ can defeat Steelheart. Speaking of faithful, this isn't like really a whole thing, but I did think it was kind of cute that like it's Superman. The symbol they have around their neck, the little necklace, it kept referencing. What character was it? Abraham that was the faithful?
Abraham is a member of the faithful.
Abraham was the faithful. It kept mentioning he had some kind of pendant, some kind of necklace. And then it wasn't until really late that we got to see what it was. And it was just described as a stylized S. And these faithful are the people that believe that one day good epics will come, like superheroes rather than supervillains will show up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a stylized S as their symbol. And it's like, oh, that's actually kind of cute. I actually kind of like that. It's the Superman S.
Yeah, there's a all-star Superman moment in that I really like. I don't want to spoil that book for anyone, but one of the sort of key plot points to that book is Superman is dying, and he's trying to figure out how will the world do without me. So he runs a bunch of simulations. Sort of the conclusion of that book is if the universe does not have a Superman, the universe will invent one. I think that's cute. And like, I actually think the faithful being fans of Superman is really cute. I like it quite a bit, even if it's kind of contrived, and obviously you can't call it the Superman S or the Kryptonian symbol of the House of L or whatever it is this time. To your point, Taylor, I think I broadly agree. Of like, this prologue gives a little too much away. And like, granted, if you were like 16 reading this, you probably wouldn't care, but...
Yeah. When we got to the weakness, it being like someone who is not afraid of him, that minutia of it was definitely like a reveal for me. Like, I hadn't guessed that specifically, but so I guess I like mildly forgave it a little bit more, but to me it was definitely that like our first lead definitely should have been that conversation if that's the way he was telling the story.
Absolutely. I do think that Steelheart's death is pretty cool, of like getting him to kill himself because he obviously doesn't fear himself. I think that's better than like David getting over his fear.
Oh God, I was so scared that was gonna happen. But no, you're right.
I also really just like the imagery of the sun rising, and I think this is potentially David's like first moment of faith, and like maybe not even necessarily the faith within this world, but also like a faithful of like the Son of God is often compared to the sun and stuff like that, and hope beyond that, absolutely. But like the fact that Steelheart is literally framed by a sunrise, which hasn't emerged in Chicago in like 10 years, and David's literal response is like, oh, there is stuff beyond this, I think is like quite good imagery, and I think that's an example of like Sanderson writing from a perspective of religion that I think is really quite good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's weird to be like, oh, this book believes that Christian good will triumph over evil, and being like, yeah, that's actually quite good in this context. Because largely I don't think that's the ideology. It's like, you know, evil takes quite a bit of work to keep defeated. Good is not inevitable.
We're going to learn that calamity is canonically Satan.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me, because like the whole thing is like there's an evil star in the sky, so like a light bringer that is giving you powers.
Oh no.
And like these powers come with some sort of like fatal flaw. Yeah, it totally wouldn't shock me if like there is some sort of price to come with all of these superpowers and like the corruption of the spirit and stuff like that. I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of purity politics in these following books about the corruption. I think it's notable that Prof and Megan are the only ones who get it, particularly Megan, because like as she's leaving, there's like a lot of purity politics of like, no, Megan, don't do the drugs, it makes you evil. Like in terms of the superpowers at the end is sort of David's objection.
Yeah.
Do you guys think, like via Hero of Ages, that Steelheart is going to get a redemption arc post-death?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Really?
I don't think so, because he killed the main character's dad.
They already were talking about how much he did for New Chicago.
Yeah, they were already talking about, like, at least he keeps the trains running on time, sort of thing.
It was very much framed as like it's not so much that he's good, so much as that he's the only one with like a functioning city. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I don't know. I think there is a potential for a Steelheart redemption arc, but I don't think it'll look anything like the Lord Rulers.
On that note, like, I realized, like, oh, the name of the book is Steelheart, and this is kind of like Mistborn. We actually are going to kill Steelheart by the end of the first book, because that was a surprise to me when I first read Mistborn. I was like, holy shit, we got there fast. But then this time I was like, oh, we're doing it again.
Yeah.
I liked that about Mistborn, so I was like looking forward to that. Thought he was going to lean maybe slightly more into like making it like Mistborn.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see where we go with the next 2 books, because I don't think he can really do Mistborn again. He could.
It's literally just going to be beat for beat. It's going to be them setting up a new democracy in New Chicago and defending it against the other epics.
I'm down.
I fully expect that to be part of the sequel. However, if book 3 ends with like one of our characters remaking the world or going to a different world, that's going to be
becoming
wild.
Calamity and like remaking the Earth. Yeah.
I mean, I fully expect David to become an epic, but like it'll be wild to see.
Taylor, you had something about Conflux.
I just wanted to quickly mention how crazy it was for Conflux. Conflux is a slave to Steelheart this actually made a lot of sense to me, because when I found out that there was a superhero that powered all of the city, I was like, okay, why is that guy not in charge? He clearly has like way more, like being in charge of power is like super essential, and it makes way more sense for him to be ruling this whole place than Steelheart. So then we find out that he has been forced into giving his powers to be making his police force strong, and he's been a prisoner. And then the Reckoners take this man prisoner, and then the Reckoners force him to use his powers to power their helicopter. And I was like, is no one seeing a problem with this? Is no one seeing a problem with this? Like, what are you guys talking about? You're making him a slave again. You're making him a slave again.
Also, truly insane detail about Conflux. He murdered his wife accidentally because he was trying to power a microwave to cook a frozen burrito. And that's an actual sentence in this book.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. And like overcharged it and made the microwave explode.
Conflux has been in slavery literally the entire time, because he said, like, I was a superhero. I was like an epic for like a month before.
Yeah.
Like for literally just a month before I was kidnapped.
At the end of the book, that is not resolved. Conflux is, I guess, still a prisoner, ? We don't get any mention of Conflux past he powered a helicopter for us. Like we forced our slave to be we forced Steelheart's slave to be our slave. Oh my god. Crazy times.
And also he's like chill, despite the fact that he uses his power all the time. He's not like maniacal and evil.
Yeah. That's also, I was like reflecting on that, like, what's going on there?
I think that is probably going to be a sequel reveal, because I'm guessing that there's going to be something that Conflux did, maybe like in the killing of his wife or like in the grieving of that, because he still seems to be a normal dude, that something has gone on there. Megan and Prof seem to like get corrupted pretty quickly.
Like they use their powers at all, and they get like really nasty.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be curious to see what their weaknesses are. I have one called shot for Megan. That I think her weakness is actually fire, because like why else would you make your original character a big fire guy? Because people would be like, well, obviously flamethrowers are not going to work at him, never going to do that.
Ooh.
I mean, she got cremated and still
No, she died before she got cremated.
Oh,
That's
I
true.
guess so. Yeah,
That's true.
That sounds like the type of Sanderson twist. It'd be like, it can't be fire. Oh wait, but she was dead before the cremation.
Yeah, that sort of thing. I have no idea what Conflux might be or what Profs might be, but I do think that, I don't know, there's probably going to be some sort of system or like sub-mechanic to master your powers and like get rid of the corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely did not see Prof being an epic. Like, I didn't see it.
I did as soon as I
coming?
learned he was the leader of the group and his name was Prof, and I'm like, oh, he's Professor X, and then kind of just was.
Oh. Oh, that's funny. No, I totally didn't see it coming, because I was really excited about the scene where he was talking to David and the tensor was broken and he was like, just try to use it anyways. And then he like
It
kind
almost
of
worked.
It almost worked.
I thought that the tech was going to be like a Sanderson-esque different magic system. And I was like, I was like misdirected in that way, where I was like, oh my God, like something weird is going on with the technology that can like make them into like can make normal people into epics like mildly. Like I thought it was going to be like more than it was. I thought it was going to be kind of like a Farukami situation. So when it was revealed that he was just gifting his powers away, I was like, a little disappointed, but like that it was still within the like magic system. I thought it was going to be something new. So that's why I was definitely misdirected in that way.
Did I miss this? I thought it said at the beginning of the book that epics normally have 2 powers, but then we suddenly started getting epics with more than 2. Or am I just making up that
No,
rule?
They have multiple amounts of powers.
They have lots, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Steelheart has like 5.
Yeah, it's like invincibility, flight, laser beams, turning things to steel.
Yeah, and like the higher epics have more, the lower epics have less, or like sometimes they can have like lesser powers that kind of combine
Infinite
to make
handgun
really
ammo.
strong powers. Yeah.
All right. Let's do our rankings because we've already hit our expectations from the next book.
Well, no, I mean our next book isn't Firefight. Our next book is actually it is a Reckoner's book though, or a short story. We're having 2 short stories next month, or maybe they're novellas. I think they're short stories.
Shadows for Silence is a novella.
Yeah, Oh, okay, got it. Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell, and then we're gonna read Reckoner's Mitosis, which is not in the trilogy, so it's gonna be some sort of side story.
Some little side story in the Reckoner's universe.
Yeah.
Interesting. That takes place, I am assuming, between book 1 and 2, since it was published in that order.
Mm-hmm. I think Mitosis is probably the name of the epic, because all the books are presumably the name of an epic.
Fair.
And yeah, and then Shadows for Silence, which I haven't read it or really thought about much since I read it in 2019.
Is it a Cosmere?
It's Cosmere, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And then, I mean, notably, December is Words of Radiance for
Happy holidays to us.
anyone who's excited for that.
I'm very
such
excited.
as myself.
Yes, I'm quite excited to read Words of Radiance. I was excited because, like, this, again, it's the most popular book on Goodreads. You might as well read it just for that reason, just to see what's going on. I also notably bounced off this the first time I attempted to read it, because I finished Way of Kings, and I was like, I might as well give the second one a shot. And then I bounced off it, and, like, this is long ago enough that I genuinely can't remember why I bounced off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like, Kirk's endorsement of, like, Kirk is like, this is the best thing I've read from Sanderson, and he read it after he did our episode about
Emperor's Soul.
Thank you, Emperor's Soul. He really, really liked Words of Radiance, so I'm looking forward to it too.
I'm excited. I'm getting it started this month, so by the time we do the next episode, I will have been probably about halfway through with it. So
yeah,
we can't talk about it.
Yeah, and then rankings.
I have this actually, like, pretty high, because again, despite all of its flaws, I think this is the first time I'm like, oh, I can see how just the plot of the whole project can really supersede everything else. So I have this above Infinity Blade Redemption, so that makes it below Emperor's Soul, and otherwise it's my number 2 for the year. I also, just for the listeners at home, I bumped The Arithmetist up slightly, because I don't love that book, but I think I was a little harsh on it in my rankings.
Mm-hmm.
This is hard for me. I mean, Graham, you successfully pitched me on maybe this book wasn't as bad as I initially thought. So rankings for the year, it beats out Legion. It's below Emperor's Soul. I think it really just depends on whether it's above or below Arithmetist. I think it's below. I think I liked Arithmetist more.
Yeah.
Again, if your experience reading it was... I think I was able to forgive a lot because of how unbelievably tropey it was right at the very beginning. And it's like, okay, we're just doing every trope at once. I can forgive some of this, like, shitty metaphor stuff, given how tight the plot is.
Mm.
For me, Steelheart is 3 for the year, nestled between The Arithmetist as number 2 and Alloy of Law as number 4. And it is the exact same position. Overall, it's number 8 total, which is nestled between the Arithmetist and the Alloy of Law. So 7, 8, 9 for all time.
Nice.
Out of 16. So right in the middle.
I think we can wrap things up. I think if you are really interested in the craft of Sanderson and have not read this book is worth reading for better and worse. I also think that everyone should go read Superman Red Sun, because that's a good evil Superman story.
That's your homework. You
Sure.
will be tested on it.
Jack, since you said you wanted to borrow the Absolute comic books, I will throw in my trade paperback of that as well, because it's only like 120 pages or something like that. It's a relatively short
And on
one.
a comic book, that's pretty short.
That's our episode. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back here next month with Mitosis and Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. Until then, grab a book and hit the beach.
Grab a book and hit the beach.
Grab a book and hit the beach. Thanks for listening, everyone.
A Grain of Sanderson is created by Graham Gillman, Taylor Lane, and Jack McLaughlan. I edit and produce the show. Our logo is by our very talented friend Ven Busby. Our theme music is Goodnight Kiss by Too Mellow off the album Midnight Broadcasts. You can find their work at twomellow.net, that's the number 2, MELLO, and twomellow at bandcamp.com. If you'd like to support the Beachcombers further, you can do that in the following ways. First, tell your friends about this podcast. Sharing the pod in a Discord, writing a thoughtful post on social media, or otherwise telling your friends really helps us out. You can follow us on social media. Taylor works very hard on our Instagram, or buy a book from our bookshop, of which we see a small cut. Finally, if you'd like to contribute to us most directly, we have a Patreon. Those links are in the episode description. Questions, critiques, or encouragement? Please write us an email at agrainofsanderson@gmail.com, or join our Discord. A link is available in our show notes. Thank you so much for listening.